Hey, so this is going to be my 3.22 Affliction League Herald of Thunder build guide. I want to first start off with some gameplay here, showing off the what it looks like in a map. Herald of Thunder is a really fun build. It's an Autobomber, which means you don't need to press any buttons past the beginning, getting your combo started. It's a pretty fast mapper. It's relatively cheap for an Autobomber, and with the changes in the last patch to Corrupt and Cry no longer having the cooldown that it used to have, and Word Loop kind of being a lot different than it used to be, we don't know kind of how that'll work out. But old Word Loop is kind of dead. In its old form, I think someone will manage to get it back working again, but it's going to require someone smarter than me. It's looking like Herald of Thunder is the premier Autobomber at the moment, so if you're interested, this is a pretty good place to learn a little bit about it. This build, however, is not for beginners. If this is the first time you're playing Path of Exile, you really, really, really do not want to start here. There are great builds from other creators like Zizarin or MaxRoll.com that can really help you a lot. This is not the place to start. Herald of Thunder is not for people who hate dying. This is a very rippy build. As I'm not dying here, but this is also some juiced content. It really does not fare well in Simulacrum or Uber content or stuff like that because it's pretty squishy. So if you're looking for something that will never die, this is not it. So there are several variants of Herald of Thunder. Let me just finish out this map here. This is an assassin. Some people play this as a Pathfinder with poison. They use Voltaxic Rift poison. That's going to be a lot different than this. The Elementalist version is very similar to this. They just don't go as hard into crit early on, although they can go crit. And this here is going to be the crit assassin version. There's also a Crystallized Omniscience version, but that one's a bit too expensive. I don't personally like it, but it's there if you wanted to do a high investment version. So first off, what's changed in 3.23? We've lost tattoos. They were a pretty big deal, but not as much for this build as it was for some others. So mostly Herald of Thunder last patch would use the tattoos to fill in some gaps in gearing, like resistances or stats. We did get an extra power charge, but all in all, we haven't really lost that much with the loss of tattoos. We are losing the Helm enchant as well, and I saw some people worried about mana reservation. Here I'm reserving Herald of Thunder and Arctic Armor. If I take off the Helm, I still got plenty of mana left for getting your combo started and stuff like that. If you were using heavy cast when damage taken stuff, maybe you'd run out of mana, but we're probably going to want to skip that anyways this patch. So it's not a big deal that we lost the enchant. The build is totally fine because of that. This patch we are gaining the Wildwood Ascendancies now. I want to bring those up right here. The Wildwood Ascendancies, we're probably going to want to use the Warden, and only for one node on it. There's this node called the Oath of the Magi that doubles the defenses from your equipped body armor with no socketed gems, 50 extra elemental res with no socketed gems in your helm, 25% maximum life if you have equipped gloves with no socketed gems, and 30% increased movement speed if you have an equipped boots with no socketed gems. Herald of Thunder has extremely low socket pressure compared to a lot of other builds. We can probably fit everything the build absolutely needs, especially early on, into your weapon in your body. So you can kind of just have all these things for free and have a ton of stats. It'll be really, really nice. The bark skin here probably isn't good. It increases your armor. We have no base armor to increase. The hits against marked enemies can't be suppressed could be cool, but honestly, I would just probably grab these Vivid Wisps found small nodes because, in theory, if I'm understanding the mechanic correctly, the more wisps you find, the more currency will be shot out into the map, so it should make farming even better. Getting a tincture, they don't apply to spells. If they turn out to be totally broken, you can apply them with Leap Slam or Shield Charge depending on what your weapon is. But I can't imagine a world that's worth it. But maybe they are, maybe they're broken, and you would do that. But probably not for this build. Later in the end game, you would want to switch over probably to the Primalist because you can steal all their Ascendancy nodes. You probably would actually just want the Assassin nodes or the Elementalist nodes anyways, but if you find something cool, this would probably be maybe an Ultra end game. If you've got Mirror Tier Charms or whatever, this would be where to go. The Warlock that they've added has nothing this build wants. If this effigy somehow works to protect you, maybe you'd want it defensively, but it just seems bad because it can kill you if it gets attacked instead, and the curses probably aren't better than Assassin's Mark, which you could be using yourself. So I would forget about the Warlock and probably just stick to the Warden with Oath of the Magi and whatever else you want until, yeah, you can afford the charms that you need for your build. So next I want to talk about item availability, which might have changed since last patch. As always, GGG sometimes changes the rarity of items, which could affect the prices. All of the items that this build uses are pretty much have no use for anyone else, so we're not really that at risk of price spikes. I think the biggest one that people could run into is the Replica's Dragonfang was a really cheap, easy to get amulet. There's a chance they'll make that rarer this patch. I wouldn't be surprised because everyone was using it last patch. And the key item to this build that might be expensive next league is Inpulsa's Broken Heart. So it's been a 30C unique for the past 6 or 7 leagues. If I just pull it up here, you can see the chart here on PoE Antiquitary. As you see, price craters really quickly. You know, a few days in, you can get this chess piece really cheap. However, it's pretty rare, and no one else is using it at the moment. However, the one league where the price was crazy is Lake of Calandra. So if we add this in, boom, super, 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 super expensive, and that's not even for a sick link. That's just for one at all. That's because the supply of this chest is really low, and everyone played Lightning Conduit that league. They've buffed Lightning Conduit this league. They've buffed Crackling Lance, Divine Ire, Arc, and Ball Lightning. If one of those builds becomes really meta and they all want this chess piece too, the price could be huge. So this is something that I would definitely keep an eye on if this is a build you want to commit to, because we need this chess piece or we don't function. And if a lot of other people are buying it, the supply is going to be really low. It's only because no one else uses this chest that it's been so cheap. It's a tier 1 rarity unique, so there are not many of them to go around, and that is definitely something to keep an eye on. So, what are the basics of Herald of Thunder? Well, outside of reserving the Herald of Thunder, we have a combo through our gear, which allows us to autobomb. We start off with the Storm Secret Ring. Whenever you shock an enemy or kill a shocked enemy, we start our combo up and start raining lightning bolts down from Herald of Thunder on the enemies. As long as you are continually shocking or continually killing enemies, these bolts keep on falling. This is what automates us. If you go more than 6 seconds without shocking or killing, the buff does fall off, but for general mapping, that basically never happens. On a Pinnacle boss or something, you just keep a Stormbrand on them, and you're good to go. Herald of Thunder is single target. That is really good for boss DPS, but it's really bad for mapping. If an average pack has, like, say 20 or 30 monsters and we're hitting 8 to 10 times a second, that's still several seconds to kill all the enemies, so you absolutely need explosions with this build. We achieve that through the Inpulsa's Broken Heart chest piece and the Storm's Gift gloves. The Impulsas is what causes the explosions. The Storm's Gift spreads shock to everything and counts enemies we've killed as shocked. This really smooths out our whole rotation. You can kind of get away without the gloves, but it's really not fun. You need to then manually shock everything. So I would absolutely recommend these 3 items. They're kind of the core to the build. The downside here is the Storm's Secret Ring does a lot of damage to you. So we're hitting 8 times a second, 10 times a second. Each time you hit an enemy, you yourself are hit with 250 to 500 damage if you have 2 of these rings. That is a lot of damage to be taking, so we need a health pool big enough to leech from, and a way to split up that damage to leech. And we achieve that with the Glorious Vanity Doryani's gem. It gives us Corrupted Soul here, which makes half the damage go through our energy shield, and then we leech both energy shield and life, kind of doubling the amount of leech that this build can do to kind of sustain our health. So we've talked about the first 4 items we need: the Impulse's Broken Heart, the Storm's Secret Ring, the Storm's Gift gloves, and the Glorious Vanity Doryani's. What else do we need to get this build off the ground? Well, we need some leech, and we will get that through our cluster jewels. They can be any size to start off with. Obviously, the fewer passives, the better. We need one with Storm Drinker, which allows us to leech Energy Shield, and we need one with Doryani's Lesson, which allows you to leech life. With these 2 clusters, in the Glorious Vanity, we can sustain ourselves pretty well pretty early on. If you're having some sustain issues early, it's in the PoB, you'll take these life coop nodes up here. It goes a long way to smoothing out your health, but once you've got a big enough health pool that the 10% leech, I think is the max, is enough to sustain you, you're good to go. Also, early on, you're probably only going to be using one Storm Secret Ring, so you're only taking 250 damage a hit, not 500 damage a hit, and that makes a really big difference early on. Next up, you need your medium cluster jewels. These are the Herald medium clusters, and you're going to need 4 of them. They can be pretty expensive to buy, but they are extremely cheap to craft yourself. So you throw them in the Harvest Crafting bench, hit them with a Reforge critical, and every single time you'll get the Self-Fulfilling Prophecy node here. You're just hoping to fish for a second one, but a second node on it that's good, but really just even one node's good enough. It gets your crit up and going, and that's what's really important. So you just throw them in. That's what, I think 600 juice total for 4 of them. Next is the Small Armor Cluster. Alternatively, you could get an Intuitive Leap Blood Magic, which would Intuitive Leap you down here. The point is to get either Endurance Charge here or Endurance Charge up here on hit. You're hitting yourself, so you'll constantly have Endurance Charges, and it fuels your Immortal Cry. It is really good and important for your defense, so you really want to pick one of these up. And lastly, the Calamitous Visions here, which is a unique cluster jewel. It's not used by anyone, so it's pretty cheap. It allows you to locate Lone Messenger, which doubles your damage. Lastly, you want to get some Regret Orbs. You're going to need a lot of Regret Orbs, especially if you level to something that paths down this way, like if you do Hollow Palm or whatever you chose to level if you're league starting. You'll probably get some as you're just leveling up anyways, farming currency, but you're going to have to get like 70, 100 of them, something like that. It's a lot. Just build it into your budget. Finally, the Annihilating Light Staff. That's going to massively reduce your defenses, your 60% reduced elemental resistances up to 70% reduced elemental resistances. Try to get a roll that's as low as possible with that one. It triples your damage. It really makes your pops better. Everything's so much easier with that staff. It's a lot of resistance to deal with, so try to get some jewels that have resistance on them. I have Grand Spectrums here. Grand Spectrums are going to be rarer next patch, so they might not be the cheap option like they always have been. If they're not, then just get 50 resistance jewels, and you're good to go. So, with the core stuff out of the way, you're going to be good to blast white maps, even up into yellow maps. You'll have about 300k DPS, 400k DPS, something in there. That's more than enough to get going. Obviously, you're going to struggle in red maps with this, but you get up a lot of damage pretty quickly. So let's switch our items over to kind of like what it looks like Endgame, and go from our 4 link to our 6 link. Your damage goes up quite a bit. So what we're going to kind of do gear-wise progressing that distance is get our cluster jewels set up. We're going to have a third group of cluster jewels down here. You're going to want to make sure your cluster jewels are small enough and have good notables on them that you want. The lightning ones you want to have Prismatic Heart, Stormdrinker, and Widespread Destruction. You're not going to locate Widespread Destruction. It's just to keep the other 2 nodes where they're supposed to be. You're going to want 2 of those. And then one with Stormdrinker and Doryani's Lesson, if possible. But the Doryani's Lesson is important. You want one of them somewhere. They're just pretty expensive, so you probably don't want it on everything. Mortleech isn't really necessarily going to help you out much. Other items to look out for, getting an Intuitive Leap down here. That can free up some skill points, so you don't need to waste so much distance traveling. You need to get, at some point, an Amulet. Right here in this PoB, I just have one with resistance on it in life, but eventually you can get something like the Replica Dragonfang with the +3 on it. That's pretty good. It was pretty cheap last league. It could be cheap again. An Ashes of the Stars would be great. It's going to be very expensive this league, but it would be a good choice for the equality. You'd want a perfect one, or not even bother with one at all, just for how the breakpoints end up working out. And lastly, the Simplex Amulet from Heist is new. It is going to be a, hopefully, rather cheap way to make a +2 amulet. There will no doubt be people putting out guides, or already have put out guides on how to do that, but you can kind of reforge Harvest into getting a free +2 lightning, and it's really good. So, that's about it for that. You want to get a Stygian Vice with a Phasing Abyss jewel. That kind of helps you defensively, surprisingly, because as you're killing enemies and running through packs, occasionally you'll not pop a pack instantly, you'll run into them and you'll die. The phasing allows you to run through that pack, and then you won't die. So having that is really, really good. I would definitely focus on getting that. And lastly, the Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewels. I think on this build, did I have them yet? Yes, Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh. I've got Mistwalker here, but honestly, any of the assassin ones you can get, so Deadly Infusion, Opportunistic, Ambush, and Assassinate, whatever's cheapest, just get that pair and, path into the other one instead. So you want to have all 5 of these. And lastly, I want to talk about the changes with quality that I brought up earlier. So when you're gearing, you can get your hands on a perfect Crest of Desire or an Ashes of the Stars. You can bring your 50 plus 50 from the Storm Secrets, plus the 20 from the Gem, plus the Crest of Desire. If you get it over 33, it's going to put you at that 153 breakpoint. You just need the total quality to be 153 between the rings and your Gem and your other items. You can get the 10 hits a second. Now, if you drop the Annihilating Light for the Crest of Desire, you're going to lose a lot of damage. You're going from triple damage down to double damage. So you need to make that up through A, just hitting more often, and B, having a really expensive weapon like a +2 scepter or wand. That will bring you up, but then, you're looking at an expensive weapon plus an expensive helmet plus maybe the expensive amulet. A 20 divine build suddenly turning into an 80 divine build. It might be not worth the money for the benefit you're getting. The possibility is there if you want to kind of push it to the limit. So lastly, what sort of content? You've built your Autobomber. What is it good at? It is amazing at red altar farming. If you get the Pantheon for immunity to burning ground, there is basically nothing in red altars that you even need to pay attention to. The most dangerous thing is the flasks causing the meteors to fall on you, but you are always moving so they don't do anything. Everything else pretty much is just higher monster damage, but you're so squishy and you kill everything instantly, so having double a hit that was going to kill you in one hit doesn't really matter. So you just can take all the red altar things without pretty much any downside. So it is really, really, really efficient and good at farming red altars. Thankfully, they're also probably the more valuable ones most of the time. It is amazing at essences as long as you know how to dodge novas by blinking over them, and it's pretty good at Alva and Einhart too. At decent levels of investment, like 20 divs invested into the build, you can do Sanctum pretty easily too, as long as you've kind of got the skill to dodge things. But really, you're spending the whole time just running circles around enemies anyways, so it's not as hard as you would expect. It's actually my easiest way of doing Sanctum is doing it on a Herald of Thunder character. But it's also not the sort of thing to off-screen stuff, so it's not like, don't get this character just to do Sanctum, but it's pretty good at Sanctum incidentally. Things you do not want to do. It can do rituals, but it is not good at them. I would not do this for ritual, and because of that, I think it's going to be very bad at ultimatum. So I would not recommend that. Anytime you've got multiple really, really tanky rares on the screen, its damage just craters because it's single target. If you're hitting 2 targets, you're at half damage, 3 targets, you're at a third damage, etc. So if you're at 5 or 6 tanky rares that just will not die, you're doing a fraction of your damage to each of them. It is not fun. So probably skip ritual, although it's doable, and almost certainly skip ultimatum, at least hard tiers of it. And juice content can be rough too. Things like Uber Blight Simulacrum, you just probably don't have the damage to do it. It's actually okay at 5 ways, but once again, it's not designed for that sort of thing. Is it going to be good for the lead mechanic? We absolutely don't know. It's going to depend mostly on how much space there is to run around and how much it juices the enemies. If it's like less than a 40% delirium, it's probably going to be okay. Actually really, really good at it because it's good at that red altar sort of like low-level juice farming really fast. And especially with the green juice giving just flat currency stuff, I could see this being really good where you just run in, grab as much green juice as you can, disperse it through the map, pick up all the currency, go really fast onto the next map, and that's sort of where this build shines. So hopefully it's really good for that. It will not be good for the mechanic if there are a lot of flicker strikes or unavoidable damage, because once again, any enemy that can flicker strike onto you, if it's a little bit juice, it's going to kill you, you're going to pop. It's not fun. So in theory, if the mechanic's going to be at an Alkengo level, then things are going to be great. So I think that's about all I wanted to cover with this build. There is going to be a PoB down below if you want to look at it. I'll have several for each gear level, although they'll all be the same PoB. You can just kind of adjust it to whichever tree level you need it to be. And I will also have a link to the Google Doc that kind of has the crafting guides, the item buying guides, stuff like that. So if you wanted to go along, it would be an easy resource to refer back to see what you need to do next. So with that, thanks for watching, and stay sane.